She's a performance artist, a singer, and a multi-published author, Janet Kuypers.
Hey.
Thank you very much. Hello. I'm so excited. It's getting cooler. I can wear layers. How exciting is that? You have no idea how much that thrills me. Sorry. Hi. Yes, I do work with Scars Publications just because I don't like the mic on the front and published literary magazines, but just recently they published in the chapter 18, 28, 38, 48 series poetry from Missouri performance art shows of mine in the past. This is chapter 48, volume 1. They are all things in Chicago, which is why there's a Chicago picture there. It shows from 2009 to 2011. And I thought I'd read a couple from different shows for you. For this, I think you should pose for him because he just snapshots. This one was, I believe, from a show called New Year's Unplugged, I think. I think it's called Before Taking Over the Controls. One of the times I went to D.C., I was taking my friend there to see the town because this 5'6" woman was about to go into surgery for removing a cyst on one of her ovaries, the size of a softball. Well, a friend was driving us to O'Hare Airport, but before we got on the road, I picked up a small Domino's pizza, and as we started driving along the Kennedy, we agreed that the best bite of any slice of pizza is always that center-pointed bite. So we agreed, right then and there, to eat all of the center bites of all of the triangles of pizza before we went on to eat more pizza before our flight. And, you know, another time I was flying to New Orleans on a business trip with a coworker who was scheduled to fly with me. Now, this coworker was as cute as a button girl from Kentucky, and she was a riot just to hang around with, and she was deathly afraid of flying. So I knew her fear, so I brought, this was back before 9/11 when you could bring water or soda into airports with you with no problem. I brought a 32-ounce plastic cup from a fast food joint filled with hot chocolate and peppermint schnapps. And she said she was afraid, so I told her to enjoy some drink before we go on the plane. And then she ordered beers on the plane, and I knew that we were landing, so I started telling her jokes and keeping her enthralled until I finally told her we landed and that she made it and everything was okay. I'm used to flying in airports for big events, and even if the events aren't actually flying in the airplane sometimes. I mean, before New Year's in Southwest Florida, getting trained, photographing the view from the clouds before taking over the controls. Or going up into a plane in Longmont, Colorado with no side door and a parachute strapped to my back, and someone tells me, okay, we're up 12,500 feet now. It's time to start moving. And you waddle to the open door, hold on to this fast-moving airplane for a second and a half, and then let go. I've flown for family, to marry people at a wedding. I've flown for vacations. I've flown for my mother's cremation. It's amazing that sometimes the trip can be a story, but wait until the flight actually lands, because that's where the real story can start. I haven't read that one since then, that's a long time ago. Short one from a poetry bomb, where you just go somewhere and read poetry that you don't normally hear poetry. It's called Writing Your Name. I sat there in the shade. I took a stick. I wrote your name in the ground. A preacher said the number one sin is lust. Then I am condemned. For I want you, and I don't care what preacher says. For if the elements wash away your name tonight, I will be back tomorrow to write it again. I from that poetry bomb that year, and because Scars Publications is the name of the thing that does these things, I decided to do a piece This is called Scars 1997. So now you know what it is. I wear my scars like badges. These deep marks show through from under my skin like war paint on an Apache chief, decorated with feathers, the skins of his prey. I have a scar over my left knee. It's left over from a bout with poison ivy, and after climbing a mountainside, this 4-inch long slice curves along my leg, almost perfectly defining the muscles in my thigh. I have a scar on my left shin. I slipped on a patch of rocks and cut up the lower half of my leg and filled it with gravel and dirt. Joe poured hydrogen peroxide all over my leg and then wrapped it up with paper towels because the cuts were so widespread. An hour later, I was on a plane home so I could tend to my wounds in greater detail, tend to my wounds in depth. Now, all that's left is this 2-inch line down the side of my leg. Although it wasn't a very deep cut, it looks like that scar actually just goes right to the bone. I was circular scar on my left paw, trying to bring it to the motorcycle. It has been 7 years since I gained that scar, and with each year I see it fade away just a little. I can still see it, but the memory is slowly slipping away. My cat scratched me on my wrist once, and when we had to give her some medication. Now, cats don't like taking pills or having ointment dabbed or liquid poured over their wounds. So when giving her pills, we'd have to grab her paws, pull her head back all the way by the nape of her neck, pry her mouth, jaws wide open so the pill would just fall back and then she'd be forced to swallow it. But sometimes she moved too much and a paw would slip out of our grasp. And now, over the bone on my left wrist, a long, thin scar stares at me defiantly. I tell people that if they wake up with bruises that they can't remember getting, that means they must have had fun the night before. But each marking, each scar is a story. It is a memory. It is a way to remember how you lived. And with these marks, that is how I gauge my living. It is with these marks that I feel decorated. Thank you.